vigilance guidelines, but within the guidelines, I think there can be flexibilities which can be taken care of. Like for example, initially the make procedure had 80% of the reimbursement. We change it to 90%. Mr. Gupta will explain you how he had to struggle to get it not only to 90%, but two additional factors, that if because of some reason we don't buy, we will buy normally. There is a provision of giving the RFP to the successful developer. But in case we cannot buy, we will even refund the 10% which the party spends. And even in Make 2 and Make 3, where it is not initially government funded, a successful development will entitle, and if you are not given the RFP within a defined time frame, will entitle to you to get 100% refund. That means if someone is making effort, he is financially, as far as possible, not put into difficulties. This, in spite of fact that 20% advance can be released to the party for development. So I think these initiatives took its own time for getting various stakeholders in the Defense Department to be convinced about it. No one was ready to allow the make procedure developer to have the IPR with him for independent export. The Defense Department thought that we are financing it, so the IPR should be only with us. Of course, the Defense Department has a priority over it. But if the IPR has to be used for export or some other purpose, the party developing it will have an independent authority to do it. I'm just trying to point out various figures because and various facts, because I believe that Make in India can be successful with a lot of participation from the stakeholders. And such conferences help this process of formation of mind, or what I call that mindset, in accepting these inevitable changes. We don't mind, government department don't mind spending sometime lakhs of rupees to fight. I have seen this happening, to fight for a issue which involves 500 rupees. I have seen this happening. No one has taken a stand sometime that the cost of fighting something or cost of challenging something versus the cost of actual payment. Same way, we believe that if something is given to a government department or a defense PSU, the vigilance angles are met. Not necessarily. Intelligent manipulation can ensure that defense PSUs can be also costly and sometimes involved with corruption. But of course, this is a mindset that you go to give it to defense PSUs so that we don't have a chance of any allegation tomorrow. This has cost government thousands of crores sometimes. Defense PSUs, of course, has its own strengths. And when we talk about private initiative, we are not ruling them out from the competition. And everyone should bear this in mind, that supporting private initiative does not rule out defense PSUs. And in at least 2 cases, I found them to be cheaper than the private. It's not that they can't compete private sector. So Make in India is mindset. It also involves skill development, as Pratyush said. It is a area where unless you have required manpower, you cannot make it a success. It is also involvement of small and medium. As you grow bigger, you tend to become more rigid. The reason why small scale succeeds, and I had been a small scale entrepreneur myself, is because decision making is at one point. Sometimes it proves to be costly. Sometimes the one man becomes a jack of all trade. He is expected to start up India, get up Rise India is probably an initiative which actually helps these aspects. because I have myself faced when I came from IITs and started a small scale unit. I realized that I have to virtually run around for issues which were non-technical. And when once I went to bank for a loan, I was half an hour prior to that, I was operating a milling machine on a casting, big casting which was being machined. And the operator had just disappeared because of Ganesh Chaturthi holidays. In Goa, Ganesh Chaturthi is like Durga Puja in Bengal or maybe Diwali in Delhi. He just went home and didn't come back. And we had a time frame because IMTEX, the machine exhibition, was due and we were participating. Had invested a lot of money to get a stall, and that machine had to be showcased in that. So there was a deadline. So I was myself operating the machine. And as it happened that maybe I'm not very comfortable with getting myself in the factory where is a question of changing dress. I went to the bank, almost probably having some black spots here, some casting marks on my hand. And the person who was evaluating himself was an IIT graduate. I didn't know that time. When he saw me, he asked his friend who was sitting next to him after I went away from there, is he IIT or ITI? So the friend of his happened to be known to me. He of course told him he's IIT. I got the loan, that was not a problem, but next time I met him, I told him IITians who themselves who struggle on the machines probably can be successful. It's not an small scale industry is not an sitting in a doing desktop job. It's basically jack of all trades. You have to be machinist, you have to be designer, you have to be marketing your product yourself. But this also gives a flexibility to small scale. That flexibility and innovating out of box thinking. When I spoke about out of box thinking, many in the army and navy and air force sometimes got disturbed with it because army is disciplined to think in the box. But I then told them that out of box thinking is very much existing in the army. And I gave the example of Hajipir. The Hajipir battle, when our forces won Hajipir, probably the commander totally thought out of box. He didn't follow any SOP. He took decisions on his own because there was no one to guide him, nor the SOP book available with him. He had to take a decision on the spot. A decision when it concerns life, you have to think out of box and take decision on the spot. So actually army encourages out of box thinking, but they say that do it at a right place, don't do it everywhere. So I believe this DPP offset tweaking, we are also coming along with DPP notification, the so-called blacklisting. I don't call it blacklisting anymore. I'm sitting on it. Probably we'll be having discussion today or tomorrow to finalize it with the concern. It is being now termed as penal provisions. And the penal provision includes a temporary, that is a preventive provision, and a final penal provision, wherein besides blacklisting, there could be other solutions also. The crime has to be punished based on the intensity of the crime and seriousness of it. You cannot punish every crime with 10-year sentence. Sometimes financial penalties are levied. And when I make this statement, I am making a generic statement. If there is a media here other than TV18, then they should note that this is a generic statement not related to any specific instant or specific case. But there could be financial penalties, there could be formula to levy them, or there could be extreme penalty of banning for a very long time or banning for a very small time. I think all these aspects has to be taken into consideration. We seems to have developed a rigidity of anyone violating one of the terms of the conditions is banned. Now this keeps us many times out from available technologies. So I believe that technologies and national security needs are priorities, and decision of penal action should be taken based on our requirement and the seriousness of the crime. I hope this seminar brings in the basic requirement which we have for inputs. As DPP is published, there may be inputs. I assure you that if there are some lacunas, because no one can be perfect. With all our inputs, with all consultation, we might have kept some gaps. I realized one gap which I asked from day one. You are formulating a SQR based on what is your requirement and what you imagine as your requirement in a particular equipment. And in a jocular mood, in a lighter vein, I said that sometime you may like to have a tank which can fly. Now take it in that sense only. What I am trying to point out is SQRs which go way beyond what is available or which could be possible. How do you tackle this situation? We have attempted to tackle it by making two basic differences in SQRs. In fact, three. The first one is essential SQR. In essential SQRs, basically a SQR is what is available equipment in the market.
तो रक्षा मंत्री मनोहर पर्रिकर को आप यहां पर सुन रहे थे। हमारे सहयोगी चैनल CNBC डिफेंस मेक इन इंडिया समिट में बोल रहे थे और साथ ही साथ उन्होंने स्किल इंडिया के जरिए मेक इन इंडिया कामयाब होगा ये कहा और कहा कि मेक इन इंडिया एक सोच है। साथ ही तमाम और ऐसी बातें और भारतीय सेना को यहां पर ये कहा कि वो अलग हटकर सोचती है और कुछ ऐसे बदलाव है जो हम यहां पर करने की सोच रहे हैं, उनमें लाने की कोशिश है और साथ ही साथ आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स कुछ आइडिया सोचने की जरूरत है।